Welcome to the latest Lightcast roundtable session as we bring the Simplifying Labour Market Complexity series to a thrilling conclusion with an amazing panel who I will introduce very shortly. So thank you very much for joining us and coming along. If you have any questions prompted by the discussion today, feel free to throw that into the chat, and we'll try and track that as we go, and I'll try and ask some of your questions to our esteemed panel, more of which in a moment. But before we introduce our friends today, let me just quickly go through some housekeeping and particulars. So everyone here is probably very familiar with who we are at Lightcast as customers that we've been working with. But if you're relatively new, let me continue your indoctrination into the wonderful world of Lightcast and our mission, which we share with all of you, which is to really help unlock the opportunities and possibilities in the labour market. The world of work is ever more complex and fast moving, and it's our express view that to enable you guys as users of Lightcast to be so impactful in your labor markets, you need good data and information upon which to base those key decisions, investments, and focal points. And so our job, our mission here at Lightcast is to bring the best labor market intelligence to you so you can make the best decisions as it relates to the labor market through our various solutions that you'll be more than familiar with as we go. So it's great working with you, and I love doing these kinds of series because it's a great way of continuing to think about how do we turn data into actionable insight and hear about real world examples of where labour market intelligence is driving success and people thriving in the labour market. So before we get into today's topic, I have the great honor of being able to congratulate our latest customer of the quarter around our innovation series. And this time along, we congratulate Eastern Education Group. Alex Kennedy, your account manager, has nominated you based on some really interesting work that you're doing that's certainly pushing the limits of taking labour market intelligence into real world decision making. And so it's been fun hearing about how you built on your analyst usage and are leveraging our API and smart data to bring more of that intelligence into your core business intelligence and dashboards. So great to see that work, and we're hoping you'll join us for a case study before long so we can share that experience with our wider customer group. So congratulations, Easton. I'm sure the $1 million check will be in the post very soon and making its way to you. Not all facts are complete in that statement. Judge which ones might be wrong. But anyway, congratulations and thanks for your work there. And I know this is a growing area, so excited to share that experience with others. Right, on to today's topic and our esteemed guests. So as you know, and hopefully you're up to speed with, we've been in a series of activities around the concept of simplifying labour market complexity. It's our mission at Lightcast is to really break down and understand what is driving the world of work, and it is a very complex place. So we spend a lot of time behind the scenes, and mostly very clever people locked in cupboards around the world, trying to make sense of a whole range of data and make it usable and useful. And so we use and leverage a lot of taxonomies. There are a lot of standard ones out there, as we've discussed previously. We've also worked hard at Lightcast on building off those and trying to kind of fill in some of the holes and the gaps. So we talked a little bit about our occupations and our skills, taxonomy, but the key themes that really drive us in how we try and structure our growing information base is, can we help understand the world and look globally? So look across the world and compare apples with apples, because there's a lot to learn from other parts of the world and different aspects of the labour market. And a lot of the themes driving that complexity in the labour market are universal challenges. And so how can we bring a common language to that? Granularity is really key as well, and so a lot of the detail that we build into our taxonomies are really quite critical to getting beneath the headlines and turning interesting headline information into meaningful action and responsive. The world is changing at a crazy pace. How do we make sure our understanding of that keeps up with that pace? And a great challenge with a lot of your standard official data structures here in the UK, SIC codes and SOC codes we're all very familiar with, is is they're great in the sense that they're broadly utilized and join a lot of different disparate data and activity together, but often, don't tick a lot of these boxes, particularly global, because our SOC codes are our SOC codes. No one else's. So it's very difficult to compare around the world. The data is granular, but not crazy granular. And we on a previous webinar talked about cybersecurity as a role. Yet, ultimately, to understand how we serve that market, we need to break it down into its constituent parts, and then responsive. Just the fact that the pace of change in the world means that cutting data and defining data every 10 years is just not keeping pace. So that's where we spent a lot of time here. Obviously a very enthralling and exciting topic, but don't worry, folks, we won't be talking too much about taxonomies, and more actually about the why they're so important now and what they actually enable in the field. So to lay some foundations for today's conversation, we're going to probably dive into a few key policies that I know are influencing a lot of your own focus. The industrial strategy is picking up pace now. The recent iteration of that was released a couple of weeks ago. There's a real focus on the IS8, the 8 key sectors, and how we rally around those. A lot of that is driving skills reform, and particularly thinking here in England, Skills England, and the emergence there, and those things tying together. But all of that is also feeding into the power of place and the devolution agenda, where actually, as well as thinking about how do we meet the challenges and opportunities head on at a national level, how do we unlock areas of excellence and strategic benefit at a local level to really exploit those opportunities and build off our strengths, but also identify where there are weaknesses to field in economies. And so our group today is really sort of centered around various themes of that. And I'm very delighted to welcome Adrian, Julian, and Hayley here. Thank you guys for joining us. We've got a Cornish takeover. So we have Adrian from Cornwall Council, Julian from Falmouth University, and Hayley from Truro and Penwith College, all operating within a regional focus and national as well, of course, influencing that. But wanted to really bring together, I think, some interesting stories of activities that are going on, and how we can use the power of place, but also the importance of aligning our activities. We all have different motivations and drivers around common themes, and so today's discussion is really about hearing some of that in action, and some of the great stuff that's going on across Cornwall. So as we dive into that, let me first of all let you guys introduce yourselves properly, and tell us a bit about who you are, which organisation you work for, your relationship with Lightcast, as we've been working with you in different guises independently, but also a little bit about some of the kind of headlines of where you see that kind of labour market complexity influencing your daily work. So let me start with Adrian, and then we'll go to Julian and Hayley. So just a quick intro there, and then we'll get the discussion going.
Hello, I'm Adrian. I'm working for Cornwall Council on the Adult Skills Fund devolution process. We will be devolved as of the 1st of August 2025, and that moves the adult skills market slightly from national. We've got a greater flexibility about what we can achieve locally. We can bend the rules and flex the rules where we see fit, and information in doing that is pivotal and key, really. So we are looking at information sources to allow us to make informed choices, and Lightcast is one of those things that we can utilise to make better local choices for the local market.
Julian.
Yes, thank you. Julian Hughes, work at Falmouth University. We're still down in the west of Cornwall. We haven't moved. Although we're coming up to, of course, our busier time, which is great because it leads directly into what we talk about here, and understanding a little bit more about the labour market. My background is commercial, really. I've been with Falmouth for about 7 years. I've dealt with Lightcast for a commensurate amount of time. My role sits around, and this will be familiar, I imagine, to many around the whole of this group, and wider than this group watching, is taking the inception of an idea, the glint in the eye, and delivering it into something which is a fully functioning course. From that, it's evolved over the last 7 years dramatically, taking in a lot of insights, a lot of data, like us performing an ever increasing presence in the data we use to make decisions, from employability all the way through to market insights and through to our vice chancellor who sits on the skills board locally now. So it's relevant. It's really cutting edge stuff that we're looking at, and it goes down to the specific employers too. So it adds some extra needle, and it's important because we know that an awful lot of money passes through students into the organisations that we have, and they need value for it now. And their voice becomes ever louder, and we need to make it relevant to them, but also local employers, because they need to know what's transferring, what are the skills, who are these graduates, and how are they armed and best able to deliver in the workplace. So in a nutshell, that's me from the glint all the way through to delivery.
Excited to dive into the glint in more detail. Over to you, Hayley.
Perfect. Hello, everyone. I'm Hayley from Truro and Penwith College. I'm one of the vice principals with the remit of skills, adult learning, apprenticeships, and all stakeholder relationships. So Lightcast provides us with extremely important information to help us in a number of ways. First of all, to influence the curriculum that we're required to deliver to meet the needs, not only locally, but nationally and internationally. As well as that, it allows us to have a very clear understanding of the soft and transferable skills that employers need when we're preparing these young people for their next steps. And what we need to be very responsive to is making sure that we prepare the entire person, and we make sure that they're ready for an agile and flexible future, as we don't know what the job market will look like going forward. We also use Lightcast in our website to allow our students to search for careers rather than courses. And I think that that's a big step that we've taken over the last 2 years. And it really does help people to cluster those A levels, or to have a very clear understanding of, if they want to be a nurse, what they need to do to actually study at college. And I think that's absolutely vital for us. And the labour market information is exactly the same, really, as the other two. With adult skills, is absolutely key, because nearly a quarter of our population are economically inactive, and that's a lot of people that we need to be working with. We have about 18% who have opted to retire early that are under 64. We've got 34% of those that are health related, but 47 of them are just out of work. And I think, responding to the Get Britain Working, we have to understand the needs of the county to enable us to provide the courses to respond to that.
Really fascinating things, guys, and there's a million things to unpick, and as always, we're never going to have enough time to do to justice all of these. We did ask the viewers, I suppose the audience, to share any questions they had off the bat, given the synopsis for today's session. And we actually, I think one that's a really helpful one to kick us off, from one of your colleagues, from Tom, who was sort of asking, how do we make sure in that skills challenge and that labour market challenge that each of you are articulated from slightly different viewpoints, how do we make sure we get input from the smallest end of the labour market, the micro SME end? Because I think, the Cornish economy is absolutely dominated, isn't it, by a large number of relatively small organisations, but that's the backbone of the economy. And I know it's similar around the country, but Cornwall's probably just a little bit more extreme in that sense. So just really interested as we think about how do we corral around the needs and make sure we align opportunity and identify that opportunity. What anything to say about that, and how that might be unique, a unique challenge to Cornwall, perhaps, that you're addressing individually or collectively head on? Anyone?
Yeah. Shall I take that first of all? So Cornwall is very unique with regards to its geography and population. And we've got about 23,500 active enterprises in Cornwall, and 88.5% of those are micro businesses. So it is absolutely crucial that we listen to the voices of employers to understand exactly what they need. And then therefore we need to tailor our solutions to suit their needs. we've had some really positive examples of that just this week, where we've spoken to a range of employers who've got micro businesses or are a part of an SME, and we've listened to their voice, because what they need is a niche solution, a different solution. We can't just generalize, but obviously we can't be too bespoke, because obviously we've got the other end then, which doesn't make us financially viable. So it's about understanding what solutions will work for a range of micro businesses in Cornwall and responding as we see fit, really.
Yeah, interesting. Julian, how is the university coming in and around this topic? And I suppose an open question about how you guys are connecting and collaborating in that sense as well.
Yeah, I mean, our research and knowledge exchange department now have taken on 3 new roles only in the last 8 months, which reach out to local enterprise, local industry to do just this, because we're face facts, but the higher education layout now, the whole landscape's changed. So yes, there are still the 3-year traditional degrees, the undergrad degrees, and you walk through it, maybe with an optional placement year. But we have to respond to the economics around short courses, on-demand courses, online platforms, bite-sized chunks of learning which respond to skills need. Because a local employer might say, we need whatever, better technical skills or better appraisal skills. We might not be able to deliver that in a 3-year plan, and the graduate might not even live here. So we've had to address both areas. And as Hayley points out, sometimes some of these things aren't viable to begin with. So there's a bit of a leap of faith in how we understand the market, of which there is very little data to at the moment. So we have to engage with our business fellows who reach out through this department and say, what is it you need from us, and how can we best engage? Be it like the local, so actually, funny enough, Cornwall Council might be one, the NHS might be one, NHS trusts, and other smaller organisations, because there are huge gaps in their skills. We know that because, funny enough, the data tells us, but we're not ready to respond yet. So we're really playing catch up now and building things around responses to the skills gaps that lay out in front of us. And it's a heady task. The data alone that even Lightcast throw into us is stark, because it shows that we have more gaps than we can shake a stick at. So I think that, coupled with something like lifelong learning entitlement, which will start becoming more detailed, as Wonky suggests this morning, and we'll start knowing a little bit more as they promised, could radically change how we attack HE and what it means for local employers, what it means for even global employers, about the value-added effect of a graduate or somebody who's learning on demand, how they match up their skills. So, yeah, I agree with Hayley. It's fundamental, but we've got to get it right. It has to be financially viable, or else these could sink quite quickly if we don't get it right.
Well, that's maybe a great point to go to you, Adrian, right? Because as you described, certainly the greater flexibilities and powers from a devolved perspective. How are you responding to that?
Yeah, so certainly I'll echo what the other two panelists say in the transferable skills and supporting the knowledge surrounding what work and employment involve, and what skills go with the person and can feed into those things, build a bigger picture. So one of the things we're looking at within the council, and it's early days yet, is trying to build programs of sort of skills escalators. So looking at starting off at lower level and moving through and progressing through higher level courses to feed into job markets at all levels. So this essentially builds around courses as well, but also an understanding that in this changeable thing, where we can't be aiming for a single point. We have to be responsive to what's happening in the job market if we're going to put people into employment. So keeping an eye on what skills are necessary, how that's moving, will allow us to flex on the skills building locally. Obviously, baseline skills are important to us, and that's going to put more people into work. So looking at, I guess, knocking off those easy wins, those big easy wins first, in terms of what skills do we need to address for the biggest value for money, and moving on from there in consultation with our partners. So that's kind of one of the agendas we're looking at in terms of devolution. But we can we can flex on courses and things like that, which might not be delivered in a similar way within Cornwall. So looking at funding through different streams and things along those lines. So we can be quite reflexive in terms of the landscape, given the knowledge of where we're going and where the landscape is at the moment, where we're
Yeah.
at.
Some interesting things amongst all of that discussion around transferable skills as well as more technical and niche specific skills. Anyone got some good examples of projects, programs, or areas that you're looking into that might kind of reflect on one side or the other? And I suppose a follow up question could be around: are there particular emergent things in the Cornish labour market that hopefully come through to you through Lightcast data or your wider conversations with employers that are particularly interesting that folks might be intrigued to hear? Maybe things you're rallying around. Any examples to share?
There's
But
sorry,
go on.
Hayley. You go. You go, and
Oh,
I'll
I was just going to say we're probably quite similar to the rest of the UK, really. But I think for us, there is a real need to focus on core competencies that cut across all of those industries and really look at that digital literacy and green skills, problem solving, communication, resilience. And when I say communication, it's not about just being able to talk to somebody, it's being able to get your voice heard and making sure that you can have a discussion or debate. And I think that's still sticking with the soft transferable skills. But as I said previously, if we don't prepare the person, we're not going to be able to prepare a workforce for the future, and therefore we won't have that resilient workforce that's going to support the economy. We do lots of really good innovative courses that really support all of those different things. We, under the SPF, we've got a green program, we've got a digital program, and they really work well, and they do help adults to have a very, very clear understanding. And the same with our construction and retrofit. We're really trying to work with employers to understand and build a workforce for the future. But I think actually, looking at our LSIP and potentially what our second LSIP is going to look like, they are fundamentals. They're not going to move. It's about trying to move into a greener approach across all industries. But I would imagine we're quite similar to the rest of the UK with that.
Anything specific, Julian, in your world that you can kind of
Yeah, I could muddy the waters and confuse everybody by saying like transferable technical skills, because we have, and I mentioned this I think on our call previously, where we have certain areas in our business which really, I call it a business because we have a core of skills which we deliver across from acting, musical theatre through to sustainable product design, business and experience design. So there's a whole range of different things within that. And Lightcast has told us we kind of pour sometimes in that communication bit that Hayley talked about. That's, you're right, full communication. Yeah, some of our acting courses are great because they demand that strength. So all of a sudden we've got an inherent driver within our own organisation which says we can deliver this already because our acting team do that. And you can take that acting course and you can deliver it straight into a business environment. And so this is how you might present your idea. This is how you might influence other people. This is how you might be able to negotiate by using the cues that they deliver across the musical theatre team. And it works. But we've got to tie those, we've got to stop being precious and siloed in our mentality about what courses run which skills. So there's really good examples of that flow through I guess, our transferable skills. But also in now looking at the industrial strategy where we have our prosthetics effects course, which run across our film studios. And yes, they do make the full-size gorillas and dinosaurs and all sorts of stuff. But also we do additive manufacturing, which is 3D printing. We make widgets and things out of advanced materials from recycled plastics through to mycelia. So it's as far-reaching as it will ever be because we're at the cutting edge through the research and knowledge exchange. But no reason then why we can't stop making gorillas and make prosthetics for ourselves, our humans' teeth, eyes, noses, ears, that sort of thing. And then it starts to go into healthcare, advanced healthcare, in transferable technical, alongside being able to pitch that idea. So the more we discover, the more information we find, the more questions we get, which is a cliche in itself, but ultimately gives us a bit of a fire within to say we have the inherent skills at HE level. We just need to set our stall out and order them and break down our internal barriers to be able to deliver them. So there's a couple of examples there of great cross pollination.
Yeah, that's it's fantastic, and I think really at the spirit of what we're trying to achieve as we think about breaking down the labour market complexity is that we spend our life trying to build structure, which in itself creates silos, right, around those lines. But I think one of the great elements of, certainly from Lightcast side, as we strive to break down the labour market into its atomic level skills, that 36,000 or so skills, and reviewing the labour market instead of top down from industries and occupations, but actually look at the skills layer. What skills are in demand? The transferable skills, of course, come through strongly, and how do we execute against that? The acting example there is beautiful. It's fantastic, and we sit on just this wealth of. If we can view the world from the bottom up, suddenly it's a hell of a lot more complicated, but
Yeah.
it's more agile and a lot more flexible. And I think that's definitely a big theme that's come through from our pre-discussions and what you've described here, which is we need to be agile, we need to be ready to move, um, we need the ability to understand actually what are our capabilities as an agent of change in the labour market, and how do we put these things back together in ever more creative ways. Now, of course, we all still have to follow funding rules and regulations and definition. That's where, of course, Adrian's going to change the world for you guys in the coming months, and hopefully unlock some of those flexibilities. I'd love to see those examples coming back up onto a national stage to show that actually maybe these things live in different areas, but by putting them back together in a slightly different, more creative way with more flexibility, we're able to unlock a key need. Because to get back to that point about the microeconomy, is how do you meet people where they are now and take them on a journey rather than kind of look at the end point all the time, because the end point's changing, ever more changing, with new strategies, with global labor trends, the rise of AI. How do we make sure we unlock the opportunity side and mitigate the threat side of all of those changes? Because there's always two sides to it. So, Adrian, anything to add from any color to add, or any aspirations on your side with these brand new powers that that you're working towards? What's motivating you there?
Yeah, I mean, certainly, we can look at the workforce under a different direction now, and we can think maybe that because we're in charge of the funding, but we've also got strong links with people, our own internal careers advice service in school and things like that. We can start sharing that language, start using that language about professions and skills to build a picture of who people are, and start funneling down routes that make them an effective part of the workforce. So that shared terminology around, how you are, what skills do you have, can then be carried forward with them in future conversations. So I think there's some power in that. So looking at care, care courses. We've got some of that underemployed part of the population who have the skills to make absolutely exceptional carers, but maybe they don't realize it. Maybe they don't have the languages to express that they're capable of this, and this could be a route for them. So those languages, language around that, compared with good information and guidance and the right courses locally, can start filling some of these gaps in the employment market, for a social benefit in this case.
Yeah, love it. A reminder: if you've got any questions for our guys, or if you want to poke into any of these topics, feel free to throw it on the chat. I'm keeping an eye over it. Not seeing a whole lot yet. Everyone's very polite, but if you've got any questions, do throw them our way. As I mentioned, we did garner a few questions ahead of time, and actually, I think one of them is quite pertinent now to this conversation, which is we've talked a bit about, I suppose, how do we lever funds and think creatively and think differently about the labour market, talk to employers, leverage that data. But there was a question around how do we enable our communities, our public, to embrace this as well, and proactively contribute from the other side of this, being part of it and being an active participant. Hayley, you mentioned kind of trying to bring more knowledge and insight into careers rather than courses, so that we can kind of meet people at where their aspirations are and bring them back and help them understand how we can get them there. But any particular anything to add to that, and anything from your other folks in terms of how do we just now bring our community with us on this journey? You guys are forging a very exciting path. It's only well and good if people jump on that journey with you and are part of wanting to move and transition. So any thoughts there?
Yeah, I'll just go in first, if that's okay.
Mm.
Realistically, it's about an educational piece, allowing them to understand the needs of the county, and then showcasing what education is available to fill those gaps. And boot camps are absolutely brilliant for us, and they're obviously the short 12-week program that is like a stepping stone with no qualifications attached necessarily, just an introduction back into education, and it kind of dispels those myths. So the more that there is investment in education like that, short, sharp bites of it, that allows progression, it creates pipeline, and then it kind of does help us to fill those skills gaps. And obviously, unfortunately, as we all know, Shared Prosperity Fund is no more after this year. So we are going to have to be capitalising on things such as boot camps, and different bits and pieces, because that is the mechanism of engaging with the community, making sure that we bring them back into an educational setting, and then hopefully, if they're hungry to move on, they can go on and they can get higher level qualifications. They could go to different universities, and then they could work at a much higher level. But it's bringing them back into education and trying to take that fear away of training again, learning. I think it's important. So it's about making sure that they know what the gaps are and what we can do to fill them, really.
Fascinating, and absolutely, and that cultural change. And I think, Julian, you mentioned lifelong learning component to it as well.
Mm-hmm.
Just intrigued. Boot camps, they tend to have a theme. So are there particular themes that have resonated in your community, Hayley?
Yeah, we've got a lot to do with construction. Health is a great one, and that is able to fill the gap between doctor surgeries and the clinical skills. So we're able to work with our local trusts, and we have people that come in from the trusts and deliver those clinical skills, and they pass their competencies, and then they're able to support the more localised surgeries. So that works really well. And we've also had quite a high progression rate onto our nursing associate apprenticeship at level 5. And it's just great. And as I said, it's all about creating the pipeline and bringing them back into education and showing them that they can do it. And I think that's been the real challenge since COVID. Adults haven't wanted to step back into education. There's that, the whole myth of, it's a different environment now. It's not. So bringing them back in to do shorter courses. We also deliver tasters to those so that they can come in for a couple of hours, half a day, a whole day, just to have a better understanding of what that industry has got to offer. And we always have industry professionals that are delivering those alongside us. So we try to co-create and co-deliver as many of our programs as we possibly can. And it shows a really united response to business, which is really positive.
Yeah, awesome. Adrian, what about from the council's perspective in terms of engaging? So it's great to hear the programs and methods here, and I'm sure, Julian, if you want to add to that will come to you. But how are you ensuring that the Cornish community of especially, Hayley, you mentioned so many people now, such a high proportion opting out of the labour market. How are you hoping or steering from a community perspective?
Well, I think the hopes of the Cornwall Council is really based around a unitary approach. We're a unitary authority, so we have our fingers in a lot of pies. We've got our own Cornwall Adult Ed, which is our in-house arm's length kind of organisation that can fill in those gaps as well as our grant provision providers locally. We're a council, so we have to be over all those social aspects of like who take ESOL learning. So who are the people who might be coming into the county who need additional language support to engage with employment and just engage with the communities they're in. So we're collecting as a council data on this, and obviously we can then compare that to data of language, English as additional language uptake, and things along these lines, and then sort of identify maybe where additional provision might be required and things along these lines. So for that, obviously, we need to talk to our providers, or we need to talk to our own provider in providing that, but also gives us opportunity to advertise more locally, even within Cornwall, that this is a thing, and you can improve your language skills, whether you're needing English as additional language, or just would like to improve your English and maths as a gateway or a doorway to open for improving your career. So there's exciting times when we look at what the council does and how we can support ourselves in my role specifically in adult skills with the information we have from other sources and our stakeholders and the organisations we liaise with externally. So hopefully that will then build a bigger picture of what is going on in Cornwall, who are our clients, shall we say, for want of a better term, in the learning, and how can we provision learning to service their needs and aspirations moving forwards.
It might be worth saying, actually, at this point, our devolution process has really brought all educators, especially grant-provided education providers, together, because we've really collaborated to make sure that our education is dovetailed, so that where we duplicate, there is enough need. Where there is not enough need, one grant-provided educator has taken responsibility. And that's something, before devolution, that's something we didn't do. Everybody worked in their silos. But this whole process has been so positive of bringing everybody together. So there's now a central list that is held by everybody, and we know who is the main provider for each skill. And it's all responding to the needs of employers. So I think, although we've only got the level 2 devolution deal in Cornwall, and I think that's where we're going to be for a while, it has made a massive impact on bringing the education providers together to ensure that the skills are there for the needs of the county. So I think it's been a really positive process for Cornwall, if I'm honest.
Awesome. Julian, anything to add there? And obviously we've kind of spoken about Cornwall specifically as the combo factor, of course, of the university, much like the college, working on a wider footprint. Is there anything, any different angles that you're picking up, or thinking about how you play to the local strength, but also continue to operate in a global market?
Yeah, there's. I agree with both comments earlier from Hayley and Adrian around. Yeah, there's a short course provision. There's a skills needs, which there's room for everyone to be able to do that from FE and HE. Certainly, they address different things. But prompted by a conversation we had last week, this is name dropping, but our Chancellor is Dawn French. She'll be down next week, and I hope this isn't being recorded, actually. But as diminutive in height, she is as fierce as you like when it comes to driving Cornwall and what we do here. She's got a new sitcom out, I think, in a few months. It was filmed, funny enough, in the West Country, but it's based in Cornwall, but filmed, I think, somewhere in Weston-super-Mare, because we don't have a decent enough film production suite down here in Cornwall to support. Now, you think we've already had, through Falmouth University, a BAFTA award-winning film, Bait, with Mark Jenkins and his team, produced solely 100 yards away from where I'm sitting. Our outward and inward investment team should be looking at securing stuff on a global platform to say, this is an industry which we support. And I haven't got the numbers for what almost film revenue would actually be extracted from Cornwall and actually the West Country, if you look at it as a whole. but I assume it's in the multi-millions.
Mm.
Yet it's almost another. It's not even exported. We don't even get a chance to enjoy the spoils of that from either revenue, nor actually investing in skills. It passes us by. It comes in a bit like a tourist, takes what it wants and goes. Now, if that's not a message for a big opportunity, particularly when our chancellor's jumping up and down about it, we've missed something. So there's a great example where something, again, dive into to reference the Lightcast data, it will tell you plain as day what's required, and there'd be a great support for a funding bid to say you need to stand up on this quite quickly because it's a big opportunity.
Well, and bring that back to industrial strategy with creative performing arts and having
Exactly. Yeah.
digital technology. I think the interesting thing, and again, without wanting to sound hideously boring and going back to the data and data structures and all sorts, but actually, I think the great challenge when we think about these things is that again, it's easy to silo, and sometimes we have to silo because there's a fund here or a pot there, or but actually, when you unpick that point, think about that sector, that unlocks a whole range of digital skills, technical. So it's way beyond the film production piece that might be the anchor that brings all of that together. It's that multiplier effect and that knock on into the wider ecosystem, and particularly an ecosystem that's made up of a lot of probably a big supply chain of small SMEs. How do we rally around those things, unlock that, and actually see it for the true value? So yes, industrial strategy 8, the IS8, these key sectors, but actually our world is about how do you translate this sort of direction of travel and priority into real life action. Well, ultimately it involves people, talent, skills, people, capabilities. And so translating from, yes, it might be the film industry, but how does that relate into the roles and skills that are needed um, right across the gamut of activities that make up that industry, when it's easy to sort of throughout particular industries. And hey, we, and the UK is leading, and we put incredible tax breaks in. I'm here in North Hampshire, and every 5 miles there's a film studio, as far as I can tell, and they keep springing up. There's plenty of stuff going on there, thanks to some foresight and a shutting down of international markets in other places and tax breaks and all sorts. But how do we distill that down, that essence, into something that's actionable? And it's ultimately about people and jobs that will drive that. Yeah, fascinating. Great example. And herein lies a great challenge then for you guys, the three of you on the screen in front of me, to think about how do we seize that moment? How can we truly evidence the impact that this has, and how it will distill into the wider economy? Because I think that's the key part, isn't it? Is there's no silos here. We've got to think about how it evolves. We are coming close to time now. Fascinating discussion. I'm sure there's a gazillion rabbit holes we could go down, but maybe as a way of kind of concluding from my side, just interested in, with the changes that we've discussed and we're talking about, and the opportunities that are coming down the line, what are you thinking about, or what's a little sort of seed of an idea that you've been working on that you think we might be able to bring to bear, that you can drive forward, that's kind of close to your heart, and the work that you do. So I'll throw that out there, and probably a very unfair question to throw in conclusion, as we haven't really discussed this one, but just interested in the direction of travel, what the aspiration is, given your focus.
Well, for us, there's quite a few different little nuggets that we're trying to follow at the moment. I mean, a perfect example of one today is I met a large group of food and drink manufacturers from North and East Cornwall, because at this moment in time we don't offer a food and drink manufacturing qualification to respond to the needs, and therefore they are required to go out of county to access that training. So this morning there was 30 businesses from the north and east of the county that we don't work with that were there to engage with us and listen and build a curriculum to suit their needs. And it's all using the labour market intelligence from Lightcast that has allowed us to identify the exact skills needs. We've also, been able to identify the soft and transferable skills, and we've gone out to employers and we've brought them in. So, like I said, we had about 30 employers in a room this morning, all just food and drink manufacturers that want to be able to train their staff locally. And that's kind of our direction of travel immediately. There's probably lots more, but that's really exciting, fresh one that happened today. So
Yeah, awesome. Anyone else?
Yeah, so I guess under things like non-regulated learning aims, the opportunity to be able to look at the market and pick a skill with a shortfall and say, we don't need regulated aims, but can someone in the county address this and just put money on the table for the benefit of the local population, just because.
Yeah, love it. Julian, round us off.
Yeah, I mean, finally, this isn't a sales pitch for Lightcast, but it might sound like one.
Everyone here's already bought in. They're drinking the Kool-Aid, man.
Yeah. So part of it, a meeting with Carrie very soon to look at how we understand the skills by course level, because what we're aiming to do is get each academic to, when we go through the revalidation cycle, it's all about integrating the meaningful skills which sit in, but calling them out from does it live in the curriculum? Can we articulate it to a potential applicant? Can you then assess it properly through your learning outcomes? And then can a graduate articulate that when they leave and go, these are the things I did? It sounds really simple, but that's a big miss for us right now.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And I think thanks so much for the discussion, and thanks for those ideas and the little nuggets. And I suppose what we're secretly trying to do here is help people realize that whilst we work, lots of people are striving to do this in different settings with different drivers and opportunities. And it's just, I think sometimes just really nice to see that other people are, operating in a similar way, thinking slightly or thinking differently. And what seems obvious to some people is a revelation to others. I mean, you've given me a few revelations today, certainly around the flexibilities and the interoperability of curriculum, particularly as you break it down at skills level. And that's definitely an area, without wanting to also to make this a sales pitch, that's definitely an area we're working really hard on, because I think if we can unlock that more granular layer, then you can piece things back together so much more flexibly. And there's more there that you already do than you probably will ever realize. And it's just more about how do we put these things back together in a slightly different way, rather than creating completely new stuff out of nowhere and left field. Because at the end of the day, you guys are experts in your worlds. You know what you need to do. Sometimes it's just, what are the levers we can pull? What are the quick wins? Where's the creativity and the flexibility? So definitely, Adrian, very excited about the kind of flexibilities you can bring to these guys, to maybe just where they may not feel that viable to get going, but there's a real strong hunch. How do we get over the hump, prove that there's value, and then get this to scale and move it out? So yeah, all very exciting. So thank you so much, guys, for the chat and just sharing a little bit about the work you're doing, the things you're thinking about, the ideas. I really do hope that those watching today will be inspired. Hopefully your inboxes won't be so inundated by fan mail, but maybe there are things that you guys have said that others are interested in, and they can connect up with you, as we go. A big part of this community series is trying to connect our community together, because there's a lot of people trying to solve the same things, but from different aspects. So thanks for sharing your experiences. So just to kind of conclude on this, a few resources of things that we've sort of kicked around and discussed. I know we've talked about them before, but just a reminder of some resources there to help think about how you dig into things like the skills layer within your data and understand that. And there's a whole suite of resources around our skills and occupations and other things there. So check out the taxonomies guide. You never thought it would be that exciting when you saw the word taxonomy, but there we go. It is. And we also, a reminder, we released a little ebook just talking about some of the practicalities of these things. So again, may well be of particular interest in you. So I'm going to bring this one to a close. Thank you so much, guys. Really appreciate your contribution. Thanks everyone for joining us. I really hope you've taken something from the from the amazing work that these guys are doing, and some great examples and leading examples. And I'm very excited, certainly, to hear of similar things and others, and we can bring this community back together around it. So here we go, the wonderful world of labour market complexity and how we simplify it, and hopefully landing this in a sort of meaningful and practical way. So thank you for joining us. We'll let you know what the next series is very soon. But we're taking a well-earned break. You should take a well-earned break over the summer. I know the world never sleeps, but hopefully we'll come back reinvigorated, and we'll thrust a new wonderful community series on you in the new year. So keep an eye out for that. But in the meantime, if you think we can help, give us a shout. These guys are talking your language and you think they could be helpful, I'm sure they'd be delighted to connect with you. So thank you very much, and see you on the next one.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Okay.
Bye.